Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Karyn. I love being able to share with you my knowledge and experience on subjects of animal health and pet care. And every now and then I'm given an assignment that's slightly outside my wheelhouse. Like this week, I was asked to show you how to make a paracord dog collar. So that meant I first had to learn how to make a paracord dog collar. And I don't mind saying so myself that I think I did a pretty good job. So if I can make one, you can too. In the following video, I'm going to go through step by step how to make a collar just like this. And you can also check out the article online at dogster.com. You guys know that I have a degree, right? Two. I have 2 degrees. I'm just saying. Keep making me do arts and crafts. Let's have a look at the materials we're going to need. Obviously, you're going to need some paracord, and we'll want 3 colours for this. I've gone with a green, purple and a white, and there's a little bit of a secret with the white, but I'll show you later. In the article on dogster.com, I go into a bit more detail about how to measure the different lengths that you'll need of the. But as a general guide, you need about 1 foot of cord for every 1 inch of your dog's neck circumference. You're also going to need one of these 1-inch buckles. I have gone with a metal one because they're definitely a lot more secure, especially if you've got a strong puller on your hands. And you can do the plastic, but it's a bit of a personal choice. On top of that, you'll need one of these 1-inch D-rings, and that's to attach your lead to, or a dog tag, an ID tag. You need scissors, you want some sticky tape, a tape measure, some pliers, or I've got some hemostats there to do the same job. They're not essential, but they definitely do come in handy, and a lighter. That's to melt the end of your paracord, because as you can see, it's got multiple strands in there, and that just stops it all from fraying. So do be really careful. You're going to start with your colour one, your main colour for your collar. So this is the one that's going to be attaching the collar to the buckle. So I've chosen the white one here, but obviously it's totally up to you, but that's what you will start and end with. And so what you need to do is start by finding the midpoint of your paracord. We're going to start with something called a double cow hitch knot. So what you need to do is you take one end of your buckle, doesn't really matter which end, but you want it with the sort of the outer side facing up. And you're going to take that loop, sort of like the halfway point, and push it through the back of the buckle. And then you're going to take your D-ring and thread that on as well. Now from this point, you actually just loop that loop around the back of the buckle, and then you pull that in tight, and it should look a bit like this. Now, the next part of the cow hitch knot is you need to grab the end of one side and thread that through the back of the buckle and the D-ring. Pull that all the way through, and as you're getting to that end, you want to put the end of your length of cord through the loop that you've created at the top there, and again pull that through and tight until it gets to the top. And now we do the same for the other side. And see, it's fun with all that that length of cord. Right, so now you pull that tight. Now you don't want to pull it too tight because you're going to need that to go through that loop again at the very end. But yeah, it should look like this. So what I've done here is I've actually taped my tape measure to the countertop. Just makes it a bit easier for when I'm measuring. So at this point you're going to take the other end of the buckle, and again having it facing sort of the upper or the outer side up, and you're going to thread the ends of your cord through the front of the buckle this time. So I'm just making sure, yep, got those facing the right direction. So you're going to pull that all the way through. This is where you're going to check the length, or get the length of your collar. For my collar, my dog's neck is 19 inches in circumference, and to allow for the thickness of the collar you add an extra inch. So I'm just taking the buckle all the way up, so I've got 20 inches, and that length includes the buckles. So once we've got that, I need to bring the long ends through the middle of that, we'll call that the sort of the collar length or the collar framework. So that needs to come through the middle. And as we're sort of doing this, just checking, make sure the length is still right. And now we're going to do another double cow hitch knot at the end of that buckle. So when I'm doing this one, I'm not going to wait till the end to go through the loop. As you can see, I'm just sort of going around the outside, and that's going to get that loop that we'll need at the base of the knot. So that's one side done. And just checking my length again. Yes, still 20 inches, perfect. And now we're going to do the other side. Again, so just take that around around that length. Oh, got a bit stuck there. So that you've got that loop for the knot. And just sort of push those, do a bit of pushing and pulling, and just until you've got the tightness there up at the buckle. As you work, you'll keep sort of pushing up the knots, so don't worry too much about it, but obviously the firmer you start out the better. And one final check that I've got the length right, and from here you've got that locked into place. You can actually get rid of the tape measure, and now it's time for your colours. So I've taped the buckle onto the counter just to make it a bit easier, partly for the demonstration, but also it's a lot easier if your buckle's not sliding about the place. It doesn't really matter which order you have your colours. The first thing we need to do now that we're getting our colours here is secure those in place, and we do that with our colour one, which is the white that I'm using. So what I'm going to do is create a loop and take that colour, take the cord over the top of the other 3 strands, and then you wrap that underneath those three cords and come back through that loop you've created at the top. Unfortunately, I got my hands in the road quite a bit here, but you'll see it a bit more clearly on the other side. And then you pull that nice and tight. And again, we'll do that on the left side as well. We've got that little loop coming over the 3 strands and coming back under those 3 strands and through that loop. And just sort of pull those up nice and taut. And that's going to get us started so that we've got the colours sort of put into place. Again, don't panic too much about getting that really tight. Once you've done a few knots, that will hold in place a lot better. So we're going to start doing the knots now, and it starts very similar to what we've just done, but we're starting with our second colour in now. So we're going to start with, I'm going to be using the purple. The very top cord you leave out of this particular manoeuvre first, but so you take your, so in this case the purple, so that it comes over the green, over the central cord, and you're going to want to come back through the loop at the end. So over those 2 cords and under those 2 cords and coming back through that loop. But in this stage, we're not pulling that loop tight yet. We need to leave that loose. We'll do the same on the other side. So bringing that purple cord over and then under the white and the green. And come back through that loop. Now we're going to take that top white cord and thread it through the opposite loop. So take the left cord and you're coming through the loop on the right hand side. Don't stress too much about, you know, at what level that strand is coming through, but aim for it to be coming sort of between the other 2 strands. So have that white coming between the purple and the green, or whichever colours that you happen to have chosen. It just helps with keeping it all in order as you go through. And now you tighten all that up. And this is what you'll be then repeating through the length of the collar. So when you first get started, it's kind of a bit fiddly working out which bit you need to pull tight and in which direction. But as I did, you'll get there in the end. And you end up with something that looks a bit like this. So now our purple is the top, and we start with the green that comes over the white and over and then under that central line and back through the loop, which again we're not going to pull tight. And same on the left. So over and then under the strands and through the loop. Now we're going to have the purple crossing over through the loop of the other side and sort of try to keep it between the green and the white, which I've clearly just not done. But as I said, it's not too much of a worry, but it just helps keeping the order, and it makes it look that little bit neater if you keep them in the right position. So pulling our loop nice and closed. And this is where you can start really pushing that up and getting that good tension. And now we've got the green. And so we continue with that all again, and this time with the white coming over and around. So with the tension as you're doing these knots, don't go crazy and have it really, really tight, because then you've got a collar that's not very flexible. But if you go too loose, then you've always got the risk of it getting caught or unraveling, and it's not as strong. You want good tension, but don't get too carried away. And so we're going to keep going through that pattern, rotating through the colours, so pay attention to what you're doing. I had to go back and undo a bit because I got the order of the colours wrong, and just keep repeating that pattern. And you can see it's starting to look pretty cool already. So you're going to keep doing that all the way through to the end. We want to make sure that when you get to the other end, that you're finishing with your first colour, so in my case the white colour. So when I get to the end, we need to do the first part of that knot where you come around and do the loop, but not the second part with the crossover. So come around, do the loop and pull that tight. Basically the same thing as we did at the very start of that end of the collar there. So just do the loop, come back around through the loop, and then pull that tight. So what we're going to do now is take the ends and we're going to pop them through the gap between the cow hitch knots at the buckle and the collar that we're up to. Try and do it so that they're sort of coming across in like a crossways sort of direction. It just makes it look a little bit nicer. Now this is where I'm using my hemostats to poke it through, just because it's getting a little bit fiddly, and it comes in handy when I'm doing a bit more work further on too. And so pull that nice and firm. All right, coming round to the underside here. Just making a few little sort of tweaks and adjustments just to make sure that everything's nice and firm and in place. So again, I'm going to use my little hemostats. So that loop that we created right back at the beginning when we did our double cow hitch, that we've hopefully left just a little bit loose, because what we're going to do now is pull the white and the green colour, because those are the two ones that are sort of closest to the buckle. We're going to pull those through that loop. And the other side. and pull that nice and firmly. Now we're going to come back through that loop with my hemostats and pull the green cord through as well. Once you've got that through, just sort of try to adjust it so that it's sitting kind of as flat as possible against where it sits on the buckle. Now our purple, we've got to pull through that same gap that the white cord came through, and I found it much easier again to poke my hemostats or pliers through that gap, pulling it on the diagonal just so it keeps that nice pattern. And pull both ends through nice and firmly. Now, so you can see I'm not faking this. There I am reflected in the buckle. Right. So again, just making sure we've got good tension there. You'll want to leave about sort of roughly half a centimetre, maybe a little bit more, just to allow us, we're going to seal the ends with the lighter and fold it back over that loop, because what we want is for it to not just seal the ends but to also seal it against the cord itself. Be really careful here. So we're going to sear those ends, and while it's still sort of quite hot, as I said, be careful. I'm using the side of my scissors to then fold those ends back onto that loop. And with the purple, I want it just long enough that it's going to fold back over and onto those sealed ends as well. It's not a very pretty sort of arrangement, but it is certainly functional, and it's not, you're never going to see it. So again, while that's still quite hot, carefully push that, seal that down over the top of the other ends, and so it's sticking really nicely to the cord there. And that is our collar done. Now, I mentioned earlier about the white having a little bit of a special feature, and it's a bit of a safety feature actually, because if your dog goes out at night, it glows in the dark. Awesome, right? So now for the biggest test. Perfect. And doesn't he look handsome?